Hi, Anna. Finally, we got to be on the same space at the same time because she's all the
Yes.
way in Melbourne and I'm all the way in California, but we made it happen somehow. Hi.
Hello, everyone. Yes, I'm Anae, and nice to meet you guys. And I'm so excited for this episode.
Yes, yeah. So we're gonna talk about like how to balance business and personal life.
Mhm.
There's a lot into it, and because both of us love this like spiritual, like kind of like geek, like talking spirituality and using like different terms to explain what we go through and like in business at the same time. A lot of people don't realize, but spirituality and business goes together. Like we from the spiritual community like need to love money more than actually like treating that as a thing, like like as evil or whatever, like as it used to be in the past. And that's something that we're probably not going to tag into it, but I'm just saying like business and spirituality can go together. And I feel like this is the time that we're going through that a lot of businesses are getting more soul to it. They're understanding the importance of adding more soul. And that's what we're gonna kind of dive into it.
I love it. Yeah, perfectly like mentioned. And I think, yeah, like you said, it's all energy. Everything that we know and see and don't see is just a frequency. And I know that sounds super woo-woo for some, but it's actually physics. And if we combine science, spirituality, it is actually just magic. And I think when it comes to business, as women, we do run business differently to men. And I think we need to honor that. And we've got to honor, coming from this feminine side of business and how much it can actually, gosh, like we create life. Like, of course, we can create, a successful business, a business that lights us up, a place from, fulfillment and excitement rather than like a slave to our business. Because that funny like meme of like people that leave the 9 to 5 to then work like 72 hours a week in their business because we just haven't, build a relationship with our spirituality and our energetic bodies with that. So I'm so excited to dive into it. As you can tell, I'm really I get really passionate of this topic because it's something that I'm only, gosh, for how long I've been in business, for the last 3 years, I've really just been like, oh, I see the magic of how much spirituality can bring into our business. So
Yes,
yes,
yes, absolutely. So I feel like the times there are now for me, I mean, there was a time where it was more about like spirituality itself and just healing and everything. And
yeah.
I feel like right now it's more about like, how can I actually bring the spirituality to my business side? And a lot of people are going through the business side and like, how can I bring the spiritual or a spiritual side to the business side? It doesn't make sense. Like the soul wants to bring business to the soul, and the
Yeah.
business side, people more want to bring more soul to it. So it's
Yeah.
like yin and yang kind of balance that is like kind of going on right now, like with just like with everybody, like since the pandemics that we had the chance to go inwards and like
Yeah.
reflect more of our life purpose and get to know ourselves, we start to realize that everybody has both polarities, and there's two polarities. How interesting, I mean, how interesting it happens to be, one of the energies seems to be more like work oriented, and we call the yang, right? And the yin, like this feminine energy, that's this creative pulse, can be used for business as well. But at the same time, it's more about like enjoyment. It's more about like manifesting like happy
Mhm.
moments, like love, romance.
Yeah.
So we're learning how to embody like both of them and yet see our lives as the perfect chemistry between, like I have time to focus on work, but I also have time to be my best self and like be happy, smile, and have a good time.
Yeah, I exactly. And I think the best way as well to like look at the two, the yin and the yang, like the masculine and the feminine, it's like the masculine provides the structure, the foundation for the feminine to sort of thrive and feel and be experimental. And I think once I've sort of I'm a bit of a visual person. So once I can like see this like house where like the masculine is like, you know, the base of the house, you know, the foundation, the floor, the soil, like it has this really grounded presence. It's like, okay, now we can look at the interior, now we can play, now we can like kind of just use our, again, our creator archetype in the feminine to, you know, build a beautiful business. So I love that you mentioned that. And especially like you said, I think, yeah, collectively we were always healing from a spiritual side, but now we've kind of upgraded, you know, we've ascended that, and now it's like, okay, how can we use spirituality in the business and manifestation? So it is yeah, I so agree. I think I see this with everyone in my friends and family and just, you know, other business owners, is like we do start to play in this realm, and it's beautiful and it's really exciting, I think.
Yes, yes. I mean, I wish I could actually buy a course. I'm just thinking of that like now. Like, is there a course maybe like manifesting, how to like manifestation for business? Because like we hear a lot about like manifesting more money, manifesting your perfect husband. And you know, you just see manifestation all the time in life, as you know what you need, and then life happens to put you exactly at the right spot where you actually get to see what you need. And it's like, oh my gosh, it was just like I was gonna buy this. I didn't even have to like be
Yeah.
forceful, think this right here. So like how can we use, I mean, from your point of view, how can we use manifestation in business?
Yeah, good question. And you're right. I mean, you know, I'm sure there is probably some type of course or mastermind or something that does amplify manifestations in business. But for me personally, and also professionally, how I've used manifestation is, again, dancing with the masculine and feminine. So I have a very, I guess, a strong, like, because I did business for many years in my masculine, which was the opposite. It ended up burning me out. It ended up making me really like rigid and like just tired. I've had to kind of lay back and be like, okay, how can I let my feminine thrive? And so, and that is the manifestation, right? And so I like to just use different modalities to play with both. So I will, you know, look at the masculine, look at the structure of things. So I will, for my day to day or my week or my month, I kind of plan out my non-negotiables. And this non-negotiables is, one of them is how to be in your future self that you want to manifest, right? So that may be you wake up and you have a, you know, you play with making yourself a beautiful breakfast, and like if you had the business that's successful, if you had the money, how would you live your life? And I think that's one of the key things, is to be in that vision already. And I know it sounds easier said than done, because we always get wrapped up in the now, right? And we got to like do this and that, but give yourself an hour, or give yourself like even 20 minutes, if an hour is too much, to just be in that sort of future self. The
That's all.
next thing is action.
Wow.
So this is where the, yeah, it really just, again, it's just, and I struggle with this sometimes, because that is the feminine. And, you know, you might have some ego thoughts coming through, a voice being like, oh, you're being so lazy, you have so much to do. Or, you know, like, it's just like little, like, silly thoughts, or, you know, limiting mindset will come through. Just don't listen to it. It's just because what you're doing is you're kind of shifting your identity a little bit to be in that next vision, right? So of course these like limiting thoughts are going to come up, but just remind yourself, no, this is how I want to embody things. And oh my gosh, it's been a game changer for me. So that's the first. The second I would say is, again, just like action plans. So I would play in, okay, so little goal settings. This month I want to achieve X. And if that thing doesn't come to fruition, don't matter. Don't worry about it. It will, it's like a vision board. I don't know if you've ever done a vision board, but we always do a vision board for the year, you know, like on Pinterest, we're like, oh, this is my 5-year plan or my 1-year plan. And then sometimes it doesn't come into fruition for that 1 year, but don't worry about it. It's probably going to come in the next year or whatever. And I just think that you just like embodying, envisioning, and putting action steps towards that is already you're already manifesting it, you know, because you're already in that energy of being that. So those are probably my two biggest tips. And that's, again, the feminine and the masculine, right? We're building the structure, we're building the action plans, but then we're also going to play. And how would that feel? Like, what would I do? What would I say? Who would I connect with? And I
Wow.
think, Yeah, I think that is like the key to manifestation. And this is what's worked for me. I mean, obviously everyone has their tips and tricks, but that's I've seen some beautiful progress from those two.
Okay. I would add on top of that, for my end, also, like, we can watch like videos of with things that actually are, what you actually envision for your future. Maybe that's
Mm-hmm.
like that trip you want to do to a 5 stars resort. And sometimes
Mm-hmm.
we get like that voice gets in and like, why are we gonna watch this? Like, you can't afford it like right now because
Yeah.
you base yourself on your current reality. But that's the thing, you need to still be able to do that, because when you're bidding that feeling up, that's when you're actually getting momentum. You're bringing yourself to that faithful side instead of like living from that scarcity place, right? So you actually go.
Yes. Beautifully said. Yeah, you exactly said, like, you're playing with the faith rather than the fear, and that is the biggest shift. And it's, again, it sounds easy to do, like, oh, an hour to just like play and fluff around and be like my vision. It sounds, but take it by day 3 or 4, you're gonna notice those limiting thoughts are gonna come through, those fears are gonna come through. Just remind yourself, it doesn't matter, this isn't true. I'm not lazy, I do all of it, like whatever the story is, or you're being ridiculous or whatever, just challenge that thought and play back into the faith, because that is the thing. And there's other ways you can do this too, right? So you can journal about it, you can meditate on this. Like, this is where like the deeper work, like we've talked about when we're on our healing spirituality, this is where the deep work is also going to be beautiful, right? Because that's like the shadow play of working with these thoughts so that you don't go unconscious and kind of live with those thoughts. But yeah, you hit the nail on the head. It's all to do with just living in that faith rather than the fear.
Right. So like you mentioned a little bit of the planning, like the 5 years plan, the 3 years plan. I'm actually not the right person to give advice on planning, because for the last few years, I think I've done really little planning because I've always been this like go with the flow person. But yeah, the
Yeah.
planning was like kind of unconscious. Like I knew like where I wanted to get. Like for example, I knew I wanted to get to Los Angeles, and I didn't plan like on a paper like this is how much I need to do, blah blah blah. But I was living my life basically try to shift always towards that place. And it's
Mm.
not that I regret, because I don't like to use the word regret, but I wish like whoever's watching this right now can take this as an advice. Like, please do use a paper and plan properly, because it does make a difference. Like when you actually know where you're going and you can see, the places, like how close you are, it's like you gain momentum and you actually arrive faster at the destination, instead of like just trusting your gut feeling, your emotions and your thoughts that you're gonna get there, because things can always change, especially right now, with this huge awakening we're experiencing. You have like all these different thoughts, like I remember like a time when I was trying to plan for my future, and I was like, I would wake up like, this is a version like of my future I want to tap into it. The next day I would wake up from a different place. That was insane. And I'm sure there are people who have probably gone through this,
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it's part of their awakening. Like
Yeah.
different timelines
Yeah.
get activated and you just like feel like,
Yeah.
wow, like I wanted to live in Hawaii yesterday. I planned the whole thing up, and this morning I just wake up feeling like I want to live in India. Like, what's going on? Like that has to do also with finding your purpose and knowing what you want to do, and that is very, very
Mhm.
unique. And like, everybody will essentially get to
Mm.
to decide what they want, right?
Yeah. 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 I love that, because you're right. We are collectively shifting timelines. And so of course you had this one desire and then you woke up and you're like, no, it's this now. And like you are just sort of like, I can just like, you can just imagine, like if you ever seen atoms on like a microscope, you can see how they're like, will just like buzz and then go like this, and like they just like move so rapidly. It's kind of like
Yes.
collectively we're dealing with that. um and so I wanted to mention as well before the planning part, and this is a key part, because especially if your viewers are similar to you and planning isn't like your forte, you have to, well, you don't have to, but I would highly recommend to do a visualization first and foremost, because if your nervous system gets a little bit, let's say wired, or a bit like irregulated, because you want to like plan or put goals in place, but they feel really hard, or like whatever the story is, visualization is going to be the thing to just ground you, firstly put you into your center, and just play with the fantasy of like what is it that you want to embody and what you want to have. And then you can, because every time I want to like plan or whatever, I take 5 minutes. It doesn't have to be long. And you just like cleanse your energy firstly, because you know there's always bad juju can go around. So just make sure your field is cleansed. Do a visualization of like you have a beautiful cleansed energetic body, and then play with the fantasy of like who you want to be in the next 2 years or 5 years, or even from 6 months from now. You know, who's your friends, what are you doing, how are you serving, where are you, like whatever. And I feel like when you get into that beautiful theta brain state, and then you come into a planning, it's like you're just more grounded, and your nervous system isn't going to put these ridiculous or rigid goals or plans in place. It's actually just going to flow freely. And don't be too harsh on yourself. I think that's another thing, you know, like you can put a small, you know, goals like drink more water, or as crazy and wild as be Tony Robertson or whatever, like something crazy.
Absolutely. And
And
realistic, right? Like you can be realistic and at the same time go beyond and
play.
really yeah.
Yes. Exactly. And I think that is just like one thing I really wanted to know, because I get it. For a very long time, I knew I was a good planner and a goal setter, but I was like, but every time I want to write, it's like my nervous system and my thoughts are like, no, this is too scary. But like all of these things will come up. So if you ground, if you center, if you visualize, and you get really excited, it goes from like anxiety to excitement, right? Like your body does the same neurologically. So it doesn't matter, but as long as you're in that energy and then plan out, oh my gosh, it's going to be so much better for you.
Wow, I like that idea. Okay. Well, we got a couple things to try it out already that you threw on the fire. I love it. So when it comes to planning, yeah, so we touch upon this like time is really important, right? So like knowing like 3 months, 6 months, 12 months from now, it helps you to kind of set the course. But obviously with the flow, like all things can happen on the way, and you can still be willing to, like it's kind of like this, like you can plan and you still can adapt, right? So like the
Yes.
importance of adapting in business, in your personal life, like we can probably touch upon this a little bit, but I remember like times in my life, for example, where I was just like so pumped in, for example, with a new job, and I just wanted to stay at that job and with that structure and so forth. And then suddenly something would change, and that would be an aspect of me that would just be craving for like, oh my gosh, why is it changing? Like, that thing of like, I had this, it was perfect, and now like everything shifted, and like it's never gonna be like that again. So, like, how can we train ourselves in a way to continue to flow with life freely and be in love with what we have and what's yet to be, and at the same time be detached of the process, because things are always prone to change?
Yeah. And beautifully said. And that's exactly it. It's detachment, right? And this is where, again, like if you do set these goals, don't put too much pressure on the timeline. Like I know I said before, do it 5 years, do a 1 year plan, but be like open to, and this is, I love using the mantra, I'm open to receiving more. I always say this, just as like when I tend to go into a scarcity mindset or a lack mindset, I just like speak as if like, no, I'm open to receiving more. And this is because sometimes, like you said, we manifest something that goes, you know, like ABC, but then the universe ends up giving us EFG, right? And we're like, we didn't get that. Why didn't I get that? But actually you do. It just looks different this time. It just looks different and it feels different. And this is the beauty of like being okay with receiving more, because when you're in that energy, you know that, okay, I'm going to be surprised, delightedly surprised by whatever comes my way. And also I'm okay to also go on my path of where I want to, like what the goals are. But if things shift, it shifts. And I think having mantras or having little affirmations is going to be, it just softens the attachment that we tend to go to, right? Like you said, if you had that beautiful job and then things shifted and stuff, and I've had this multiple times, like even with clients, like I have like soul aligned clients, and I'm so grateful for that. And I'm like so like attached to them, and then something happens and they have to pause or whatever. And I do get in my mind, I'm like, oh no, like I just want to, but I'm like, no, I'm open to receiving more. And that just like shifts the energy again. There's always, if I've already had this, and I think this is a beautiful way to view it. It's like, if you've already kind of achieved goals previously in your life, remind yourself of that. Remind yourself of, oh, but I've already been there, I've done this, or blah, 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 because even though it may not have looked the way that you wanted it to, you still embodied that feeling. You still embodied the way that people came to you, or the magnetism or whatever. So I think that is a beautiful way to detach the outcome, and as well, know the direction you want to go, but be more, open to receiving it. And I think this is the masculine and feminine flow, right? Masculine is very tunnel vision, very direct, very goal orientated, but the feminine wants you to dance with the journey. It wants you to just like enjoy the journey that comes with it. And because that's where the expansiveness lies anyways.
Yeah, it's a way of also like to connect to higher like fields of love, of expansion. That's why the feminine craves for more of that, because it's in the present moment. The feminine lives almost like always in the now, like you mentioned, right? And at the same time, it needs to realize, that feminine needs to realize like that the future is always gonna be also in relation to the present moment. So like you just live for the present. It's like you embody everything and you have fun and everything, but you still have the next day. You don't want to live in the same place every day. You want to be able to shift that into higher places and have the idea that you're building for the future, that you're not just stuck on the same place. Oh my gosh, I'm talking about this. I'm literally having like this like deja vu moment of like, this is all we have, the present moment. That's crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And so why wouldn't you want to live that version of yourself now? Because that is the thing that's going to shift timelines for you, like in moments, like in seconds, right? You're gonna, and that's where the synchronicity, that's where the synchronicity lies. And this is why it's beautiful to visualize or do the inner work, and then also just play, have fun with life. Because we only have the present moment, like you say. So why not live like your future self?
Yeah. Wow, that's powerful and beautiful. All right, well, we'll put more like, how do I say, like we'll go over now like some other aspects for entrepreneurs, for example, who might be watching this. The impact of healthy habits on success, right? So like habits is everything. Like you become what you do, what you eat, what you consume. There are many like positive spiritual habits that we can implement, like you mentioned, like visualizing. I like journaling, breath work, meditation. And a lot of entrepreneurs, people who are very business oriented, because they live so much in their minds, they say, oh, I can't meditate. Like, what would you tell someone like that? Because I've been in that place before where I was just so mind oriented, disconnected from my soul, from my self and everything, until I realized like I need to go through this thing and understand what that is. I still remember that moment. It's like almost like a baby, like, deciding to quit a pacifier, because it's one of the most beautiful moments in your life when you realize that you are something, that you exist. So I remember that time for me, like just walking, I was like, what is all of this going on here? Why is it all there? And then that journey started and it never ended. It's been like 7 years.
Wow, beautiful. I love that. And I've got a similar sort of starting with my spirituality too. I think for me, I wasn't enjoying the people that was coming into my life. Like I was attracting very, like not soul aligned client people, just general people. And I was like, is there something within me that I need to shift? You know, and it was just like and that's also how my journey started, because you are what you do, what you attract, right? So I do think that habits and rituals are very, very powerful to have, to not only shift the inner world but the outer world too. And I guess when it comes to professionals, it's from what you do the minute you wake up to the minute you go to bed, right? And if you are so business orientated, you have to, and this is probably one of the biggest thing that shifted this year for me, is um is be, what's the word I'm trying to get, like have your health and your wellness also on the top letter, because otherwise it's like a scale, right? If you're going to give too much, it's just, you're going to end up, and this is what happened, I burned out a lot, I was just not nice to be around, like just things like that. You have to shift. And so I would say for professional, you know, entrepreneurs that are very goal orientated, all the things, your feminine is barely surviving. It doesn't feel loved. It's very much like, you know, yeah, because the head is the masculine, the heart is the feminine, the body is the feminine. So if you don't counteract the head with the heart and the body, then you're going to, you know, manifest ailments and diseases. And like, again, you're going to lose people that are good for you. You're going to attract not so good people, you know, like it's just like I said, everything's energy. So whatever you attract, you are. And so I think for me, it's, yeah, do you have a nice wellness, you know, an hour or even 20 minutes a day to meditate, to do breath, to work out, to walk? Like so many people, you hear now, like a lot of entrepreneurs who, they're like, their manifestation money walking in the mornings or whatever, and they just like will go and for, because they need to counteract all of the head activity. So those are just
I don't know how to
something.
describe. It's so much. Like I've spent some
Yeah.
time with people who don't like, are not really in touch with this soul, and it's like we can feel it, because like that disconnection, it's just so strong that they can't really feel themselves, but somebody else can feel the heaviness that is like on the way of them feeling themselves. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
that.
Yes,
Like,
100%. And you mentioned something about that I wanted to mention. Oh, like people who say that they don't meditate and stuff like
yeah.
that. This is going to be really triggering for some, but the people who say they can't meditate are exactly the type of people that need to meditate. Because until you challenge yourself out of that, like, it's a very stuck mindset to be in, right? Like you hear those people like, oh, well, that's just how I am. It's like, that's not really a growth mindset. We're always evolving and shifting and changing. So I also, when I hear people say, oh, I just can't meditate, I'm like, but have you really tried? And also, we meditate all the time when we're sleeping, when we're walking with no headphones. Like meditation isn't like a 3 hour, like in the temple, like it doesn't have to be so extreme. And I think people don't, like, they forget that it's these little moments every day that we can meditate in.
Yeah,
And
and
so, yeah.
I just want to add up something that you said before I lose this thought. Is
Mm.
like what we ultimately have is this like realization that they need to have on their own, that until they adapt this spiritual practice, they will like not be able to grow and step on a higher level of success.
Absolutely. Perfectly said. And I totally agree. And I think it's, yeah, it's ever evolving. And yeah, so I think this is it, right? If you're someone that's very much got, like I said, very in the head, you're very good at what you do business wise, but there's a practice that's a bit challenging. Like people will go to the gym, right? They go there because they actually love that challenge. They love to like see how much they've progressed and worked out and can run quicker or longer. And it's the same thing. So find a practice that's a little bit challenging, and at least, like, you got to try for at least a month, I think, because that's when habits actually get like a routine and it just becomes a habit. It just becomes, you know, not this thing that you have to sort of do, just is easy to do. And I think that's the way to really embody that that manifestation as well, and that flow in business. Yeah.
Love it. Yes. And you know, with that, they can live longer, they can make more money, and they can spend less too, because a lot of those people end up spending so much money in order to cope with themselves and buying things they don't need, just to realize later on that it's not all about what you have, but what you become. And becoming
Oh,
the process that involves dedication, discipline, and so forth, and also setting boundaries, right? Like, how can
mhm,
we set boundaries when it comes to work and life? I've never
mhm.
thought of that before, actually. Like, I put that on a list of things for to go over with you today. Like, how can I set boundaries between my work and my life? I don't know.
Yeah.
It feels like sometimes a lot of things would be triggered, and then you see some of that things you can take and some of the things you can take, and you just decide from that. But we never have
Mm,
actually time to evaluate these triggers and like, is this really like a boundary? Is this important for me? Or maybe it
mm,
was just like an ego thing or like a reactive moment that I experienced that I
mm.
decided like, to
Yeah.
cross the boundary. So
Yeah, that's a good question. And I think, well, you said it perfectly. Like, it's about evaluation. It's about kind of collecting the data. I sound really strategic, but like like, because our emotions are always speaking to us, right? So anger is really just, if you're angry about a situation or something that happened, that's a boundary cross. And that's the best way to analyze, okay, a boundary has been crossed. Where, how, when, what did I didn't speak up, blah, blah, blah. And like, I think also be gracious with yourself on this, because I've also had to really work on my boundary setting. I come from a very people pleasing background. So I've had to learn to say no and be comfortable with saying no. And I would start by the small things, like the real small things, right? That people wouldn't really get upset about, if, yeah. And or practicing with, if that's too hard, to give yourself the space and time to be like, thank you so much for X, Y, and Z. Can I come back to you in the next hour or a day? And giving your nervous system that space to really just, yeah, meditate, evaluate, figure out, okay, how is this in alignment with where I want to go? So blah, blah, blah. All of that is going to give you the answer. And then that's when you can set a boundary or not. And also, practicing saying yes or no to the things you actually want to do. But I do hear you. I don't believe that we're always going to be in balance in life. Like, people that say like, oh, work-life balance and business balance. Like, I know I sound really contradicting to myself,
measure we can put on a
but
scale, unfortunately. Is there a device that we can like implement on ourselves to see like how much have we done
yeah,
today towards our personal life?
exactly.
Like, this could be a thing for the future. So any like it's startup creator
Yeah,
tech space, take that one.
give us that equipment. No, 100%, because the the whole point of life is to find the equilibrium in everything that we do. And so how can you be in balance the whole time? I don't think that's the whole question and why of life. I personally think so. And to me, it gives me the sense of peace to know, okay, there's going to be times when I'm giving a little bit too much of my personal life. There's going to be times when I'm giving a bit too much of my business. And it's like constantly challenging me into this dance. And not in a way that feels like I have to prove or, whatever. It's the place from like, oh, okay, it's asking me for this and it's asking me for that. And it's like just playing in this dance. And I think that's how I like to set boundaries, is always just looking in, okay, is this going to give me the excitement that I want in my life? Is it going to give me the excitement that I want for my business? Is it going to give me excitement for my relationships? Is it going to, am I putting myself in places going to make me evolve and grow? Is it making me small? Like asking yourself these questions. And again, you may need to tell those person, give me 10 minutes or, an hour to just figure it out. But that to me is the way that I like to set boundaries. And
Like,
looking into the emotion part as well. How do I feel? Because feeling the emotion always is, your body's always speaking to you.
right. And at the same time, we have to be careful because there are times where we're actually being triggered and we take
Mm,
that signal, that emotion as like something like, oh no, I want to run away. But that's actually when the universe is like, hey, you still have this thing here that you need to look at, and that thing is coming back to you. So you either facing it or you're running from it. And to me,
yeah.
I'm not gonna lie, even like despite of where I'm in my journey, I felt like I run away many times where I just
Yeah.
like want to deal with it. I would
Yeah.
always question inside, like to my higher guidance, like, okay, how do I know when I'm actually about to, when I'm avoiding the creation of an energy that is not positive, that is not going to be flowing to beautiful things versus actually like running, like versus actually facing a shadow?
Yeah.
And the answer that would come to me was like, you have to just, you have to go with it to know that, in order to see it. Like you would know,
Mm,
or sometimes just like you would know.
yeah. Spirit is hilarious. Spirit is actually just hilarious. It's always just has this humor about it, like so sassiness. Like you're like, okay, I guess,
What?
like spirit has this like way of
Oh,
kind
yeah.
of putting it back onto you and being like, and you got to be like, okay, like very sassy and humorous. It's funny.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, like that. It's just like a feeling like right when we ask questions, like you know, like something like just I'm like,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah.
that's it.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. But you're right. And that's, again, this is beautiful that you shared that because the avoidant pattern goes so deep in the collective. Like we all have an avoidant, you
Mechanism.
know, yeah, mechanism. And I think that is like for you, know thyself, right? Know thyself. You got to reflect, you got to journal, meditate. This is the things that's going to shift you slowly and surely to know, okay, this is a trigger. I really need to sit with this because this is actually time for me to evolve, or I can actually learn a thing or two from this to respond differently or whatever. And at the same time, we are human and we do react and we do fall back into a pattern and we do become complacent or whatever. But to know that and to accept it is just also going to help you shift that and respond differently. Because I think I love spirituality, but I also feel like we have to be very discerned, right? Because we are humans and we are here, spiritual beings having a human experience. So just be gracious with yourself. Yeah. But like you said, know thyself, right? Like know how you used to be and then try and respond differently if you can.
Yeah, I love that. Like, if you try something before and it didn't work, you gotta try something different. You gotta be aware when you try something different, because that's the moment when you're actually able to also recognize your worth and like, oh wow, look at me again. I'm back into this and I'm doing something different now. I'm learning how to recognize the patterns and to take a better course of action. So
Yeah.
boundaries, everybody has to figure out actually their own boundaries. And like you mentioned, like learning how to say no and realize when you're actually doing too much for somebody else because you're trying to like feed a people pleasing personality side in you versus actually
Yeah.
being selfish. It's also discernment and self-awareness and all of that. I mean, comes with the process of learning. When it comes
Yeah.
to like maintaining relationships, also that's something that a lot of people face challenges in terms of like they start building, like they start building a business and they're just so excited and ambitious about it, and then they leave some relationships aside, or
Mhm.
they are nurturing maybe too much of the business like relationships and they forget that they are still like a soul, that they still have
Mhm.
that heart, that person who craves like true love and not just conditional love, that love that you kind of get out in business, that people actually just want to be with you because you have something to offer. um
Yeah.
have you experienced anything in the past before when it comes to that, like when you were starting
Mhm.
like your own thing, did you feel like you maybe left your friends
Mhm.
and then
Yeah.
realized like, oh my gosh, like I focused on too much of this and now like where did my
Yeah.
friends go, like now this is my
Yeah.
different, it's a different circle, like
Yeah, yeah. Like, hello, I'm still alive. I'm still here. Yeah, you come back like 6 months later. And again, this is a very similar avoidant pattern that a lot of us do fall into. But my
way of avoiding sometimes is doing this.
no worries. You do you. I love it.
Yeah, that hit me, but I'm listening. Let's go.
Yeah, yeah. It's like having getting a mani penny and just doing therapy is the best. Um, no, I love it. So my biggest answer for this, truly, and it's a short one, is communication. Like at the end of the day, relationships are all based on communication. And I know that's like, oh, okay, whatever, Ane. But even the ones that are tough to have a conversation with. And again, this comes to that, you know, how I like to see it is, again, and it comes back like, how am I feeling in these moments? And is there something that I'm neglecting? That's just when it comes to having a transparent communication with your friends and your family. Because there's definitely been times where I need to have a hard conversation and I'm doing everything in my nature to not have that hard conversation, you know?
And we do that unconsciously, like we never admit to ourselves that we don't want to go to the conversation, because that's like actually another layer that we're stepping on in terms of
Yeah,
like, why you think
yeah.
I'm weak enough to not face that conversation? It just happens. Like you figure out like you're doing all kinds of different things, but not actually going to where like right when you need to kind of.
Mhm.
But what we
100%. Yeah, and I think like when it comes to having the conversation, maybe being like, you know, with a friend or a loved one or family where you're like, hey, I haven't, you know, I've been too focused on my business because I'm actually struggling with this. So many times they'll be like, how can I help you? How can I support you? How can I make you feel like you are doing enough? And they may be like, you know what? Well, yeah, I feel neglected and abandoned because I've been like, you've been ignoring my text or whatever. And you just have to be gracious with that. Like there's going to be, you know, conversations that may hurt a little bit because there is the truth that's coming out there. But if you just remind yourself that this is always coming from a place of love, obviously, if you don't feel safe with your friends or those, or, you know, there's other things happening that, you know, I'm just talking about the vast majority of like family and friends that do love you and want the best for you here, right?
oh okay
But
like
if you
stepping on it too.
remind, yeah, if you remind yourself that like it is always coming from a place of love, I think we can easily resolve things. It's just having a communication and having a talk, and then um you know, and just owning up to whatever is present, right? Like, okay, yes, I have been avoiding your text because I actually don't have too much to give right now because I'm so burned out with my business or whatever. Like just being transparent, be vulnerable. Vulnerability is the antidote of like building love into relationships again, you know, because we're all just trying our best here. And I again, I don't think there is a solid balance. You're not going to have like amazing relationships and amazing business, but there is going to be times where you have to just move towards one or the other. And it just takes communication and an honest, vulnerable conversation to have. Yeah.
Conversation, transparency with yourself and with others. Um,
Yeah.
and also, I mean, realizing that, well, my friends, ultimately, like, yes, you have all those friends in business and so forth who are all there for you, but realize that your journey, you're still gonna keep going, and the people who stay with you are the ones who like you for who you are, not for what you have or for what you're doing.
Mm.
And
Mm.
I fell upon like that many times when I had a lot of friends. In my case, it was just like personal relationships. There was nothing in business, and I wanted to like actually touch more, like focus on my career. So I was like, I'm just gonna say goodbye to a lot of people because they're not helping my business circle. And I just like took this rebellion like act of like,
Yeah.
yeah, I was like, no, 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 this is just distraction, because they were using me for fun just to like have a good time. And I wanted to be
Yeah.
part of my business partnerships, right? So like I don't think that,
Yeah. Good on you for that.
yeah, I mean, but at the same time, I wish I was more careful and not that aggressive when it comes to that. That's my point now, because I realize now, like, yeah, but they liked me for what I am, not for what I was doing or whatever. Um,
Yeah.
and now I recognize that, like, yeah. So
Grow. We grow. We evolve.
yes, absolutely. So we have only one more topic because I think we went through almost all of them. So
Amazing.
strategies for effective delegation in your business, and we can combine that basically with mindfulness practice.
Yeah.
Strategies and mindfulness practice goes together, like for both business and spirituality. From my
Mhm.
end, I would say, like you mentioned, like planning is everything, and
Mhm.
realizing that you have to put up the fire before you ignite. Basically, like taking care of your health first, like no matter
Yeah.
what, like checking how you're feeling. Don't let your feelings and emotions like pile up, because when it does come, it's much stronger. And I'm sure a lot of people like are going through that process now of like realizing this, like this reactivity that they're facing is because a lot of things that have piled up, and now is a time where they're like, well, you can create more, or you can actually take care of what it is now and do better in the future. Basically, like
Yeah.
checking how you're feeling and not just going all in because you think you
Yeah.
can go somewhere. So mindfulness
Yeah.
practice, bring it
Yeah,
on.
I love that. Yeah, and it's beautiful because I'm going to come with a more of a masculine approach, because I feel like you touched really beautifully on the feminine side and the feelings and the emotions, which again, as women, we do business differently. We've got cycles, we've got seasons. There's going to be times where we want to be inwards. There's going to be times where we're expressive. So honor that. Honor where you are in your cycle, honor where you want, what feels right to move forward. But to base strategy with effective business, I like to reverse engineer. So let's say you've got a goal, right? Let's say you have an offering and you want to promote it, you want to launch it, you want to get X amount of people in the next 6 months of this offer.
Okay.
So if that's a goal, I would reverse engineer it and build a strategy. So what you need is, well, you need a platform for where that offer is going to be. So you need to make sure there's like, all of the back end stuff, right? Because, I do a lot of business management. So I know that you need like some sort of, sales page and all the things, right? And then you look more into, okay, well, who do I want this person to have these offerings? And you kind of reverse the marketing side of things. And this is exactly just how strategy is. You're building it backwards from that goal that you have. And with that, combining all of those strategy steps is the energetics, is the spirituality. And this is a key part because, like I said, like we've talked about, there's a lot of people that are in their minds and there's a lot of people in their heads, and they just go strategy, 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 logic, logic, logic. And I've been in this situation and then I'm completely burnt out and no one's coming into my things and I don't know how to, and I just like feel so lost because I let my feminine like abandon my feminine essentially. So I think what you touched base on, having space in your business to feel into what you're ready to sort of promote, how you want to come across, who you want in your life, all these things, that's beautiful. And I think definitely put time aside, but then also reverse engineer and goal and plan. Okay, I've got to create this offer. Firstly, I have to, make sure I talk to X amount of people a week to kind of introduce them to my community, all of these things. And you just like kind of noted and backwards of if that offer was going successfully. So that's how I like to strategize. It's a very quick fire answer. There's more in depth to it, but I don't want to, this isn't a full strategy call, is it?
You're talking about as if it's easy, like, because it's easy for you because you're a business manager, right? So like, I guess,
but it's not always easy. And I totally recognize that it takes time. And I just want to preface, it's not. It's definitely something, because like we spoke about, old ways are going to come through, your thoughts are going to come through of like, I don't know enough, I don't do enough, all of these things. And this is why meditation, journaling, visualization comes in handy, because if you play again in the fear, the faith is going to drown. So we got to really play in the faith, right? So yeah, I totally hear you. Strategizing is probably one of the most stickiest part in business, but it is crucial because again, it's the masculine, that's the foundation of where the feminine can thrive. So yeah.
I love it. And like working with someone who has experience at this makes it easier, and it can help you move, like arrive much faster at where you want to arrive, because ultimately sometimes strategizing on your own and putting all of this together can be overwhelming, but having somebody else who can actually hear you and see with different eyes and help you like kind of fit in things can be very helpful. And that's kind of like what it does, right? Like as a business manager, would you like to kind of close our lovely talk today with like your background and how you actually help people to achieve their goals?
Yeah. Thank you so much. Yeah, absolutely. Would love to. And you said it perfectly. At the end of the day, so many of us, we invest in business managers, in mentors, in coaches, in whatever, because it just gives different perspectives in life, right? We get different goals and perspectives. So I think that is my whole philosophy. Like I'm so passionate what I do, because as women, I want us all to have everything. I want us to have the successful families, the like loving, traveling, the business that thrives. And so my passion and my mission is to support as many women I can to build that out, right? And so business, you don't have to work 70 hours a week and sit on your desk all day, every day to just make this business. A lot of it can be systemized. A lot of it can be, build in automations so that we can be women and we can be in our feminine. So that is what I essentially do. I have a lot of project management services where, like I said, if you have an offer, if you've got a launch, if you've got a business, but everything feels a bit scattered in the middle. Like I give the analogy of like a puzzle. When you have a puzzle and you do the border, but then you haven't done the inside, and like that's your business. It's a bit all scattered all over the place. I come in and I
On together, right?
clean
Basically.
it up, because yeah. So that's what I like to do. And my background is, I come from a problem solving project based background. So I just have this way where I can, like, if someone comes with a problem, I'm like, I see how to fix it. And we co-collaborate, and that's what I like to do. I like to build in those foundation in people's businesses so that we can have it all and we can thrive and we can enjoy it. We can enjoy the fruit of our labor. So that's what I do. And yeah, I would love to, anyone that wants support, I'm so happy. My DM's always open. And yeah, so thank you for letting me speak about it.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and for sharing like some amazing tips that I'm sure people can really like implement and see the difference on their lives, because it's not like just about us also dreaming and wanting and desiring and sending all these launches of desire to the universe, but actually the embodiment is crucial in this process. So when it comes to balance life and business and bringing soul essentially to your purpose, to your goals, what we want is you to understand that it's about embodiment. So we want to embody it all, the doing, the being, the not
Yes.
so much of the thinking, because I believe so much in the power of like intuitively thinking. That's on a different topic that we can talk about, like in terms of like using intelligence as opposed to thinking. Like and we're just gonna give a taste of what I mean by that. But basically, like I used to catch myself like thinking, debating it on like, oh, but if I do this, I'll do this and that. But the moment I would step into silence, the answer would just come suddenly, like that. And like learning how, like when you meditate, the more you meditate, basically that's the state that you're achieving to, like all the answers to your problems starts to come up. So realizing the benefits of this spiritual practice, and at the same time realizing again that as spiritual beings, we're also here to succeed, to make money, to build a beautiful business, and to add value to the world, and
Yeah.
to bring it all to a body.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. And I love that you mentioned that, because space in business is crucial. And I think, like you said, sometimes we are so stuck, we're so close to a problem, and we're trying to think through it. And it's just creates more and more like rigidness. But if you can like remove yourself for a moment, have space, do the feminine, embodiment and practices, it will just come intuitively as women. Like I said, we create damn life, so we can create all of these problem solving, techniques. It'll come to you, and having someone to reflect that back to you, it just happens in tenfold. Like it really does speed up the process. So I cannot, yeah, you said it so perfectly. Space is so important for us to have.
Yeah, like be still and know. Right?
Yes.
Like we'll
Yeah.
close it with that. So thank you, Annette, so much again. Well, we're gonna add your contact information, your website and everything below the description of this video. And with that, we'll close it here.
Thank you so much. It was amazing. You're amazing. And yeah, thank you all for listening. It was great. Thank you.